everybody. Where to begin? Well, we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about climate change, because everybody's talking about the climate changing and global warming and how there's a climate crisis descending down upon us. But is there really? It's a legitimate question, isn't it? You know, I mean, are we supposed to just listen to what people say and believe it at face value? Now, you know, the powers that be tell us that, and we all know they would never lie to us. I mean, you know, we should just trust them. They only have our safety in mind when they sit around in their smoke-filled rooms. Yeah, that's it. They think about our safety. Never mind that all these people openly say they want to depopulate the whole goddamn world by 6 billion people. But hey, hell, what could go wrong? Anyway, que bono. Who benefits? Anyway, hopefully this video will consolidate some information for you and give you a platform from which you can explore the topic further. So without further ado, let's continue. Now, I don't really get down to the real nut cutting until the end, so I'll try to pace through this kind of rapidly for the sake of brevity, because I don't want to bore anyone. But I'm going to take a look at a few bits of the evidence that indicates the climate isn't getting warmer. And I say this even though I'm of the opinion that it probably is getting warmer. I think it may very well be. I may be wrong, you know, who knows. So anyway, I'm going to look at the way the temperature is being measured, the amount of ice on the polar ice caps, and the effect that warming is supposedly having on wildlife. I stumbled across an article in the Daily Skeptic, which is absolutely a treasure trove of information that goes against the prevailing culture. But anyway, I found an article in the Daily Skeptic that showed and stated that most of the temperature measurements that are being taken over across the world are being done at airports right beside hot tarmac and hot jet exhaust, which artificially elevates the temperature. And then I found this little video on Twitter. I'm going to play it here for you. And I'll just show you what I mean. Pardon me. As you can see, he zooms in on these points where they measure the temperature, and they're all at airports. Right by hot tarmac and hot jet exhaust. Right by the runway. And here he goes. Well, that one doesn't look like it is right there, but yeah, you know, 99 out of 100 of them are. You just go right through there and see airport, airport, airport. So anyway, is that determinative? Does that prove anything? No, it doesn't. But it does indicate that there might be the data that's being collected might be skewed somewhat, don't you think? Next, I'm going to look at the change in the polar ice caps. That's one of the big talking points pointing toward climate change, according to the establishment. And anyway, they say that the poles are melting and that wildlife is dying out and suffering as a consequence. So I'm going to take a look at these very briefly and show you that maybe that's just not quite right. Let's take a look at the levels of sea ice in the Antarctic from 1979 to 2021. Take a look there. Right here, as you can see, it's basically a flat line. It fluctuates a little bit there at the end, but statistically, it always gravitates right back toward the mean. Pardon me. You know, I don't see any appreciable drop or elevation at all. Then down here, here's the Greenland ice mass. 2003 to 2020, that's almost 20 years. And if you look at 2020 and compare that to 2004, it's the same. Now, naturally, it fluctuates back and forth, but, I mean, in 20 years, it's basically the same. Nothing's changed. And then over here, we're going to look at the polar ice cap, a little map here. The blue indicates where it's expanded, and the red indicates where it's contracted. And, of course, the white is just equal. This is from January 2003 compared to January 2023. That's 20 years, and, you know, certainly looks to me like it's expanded quite a bit. It doesn't look like it's receded a bit. I don't know. Finding good information is difficult. You have to use different search engines other than Google. I use one called Yandex and one called Luxel, which are a lot more like everything was 10, 15 years ago. But anyway, that's that. And then next, we're going to talk about the wildlife in the Arctic and Antarctic. You know, everybody's talking about the polar bears. The polar bears are dying off. Everybody thinks the polar bears are dying off. And if you talk to your average Joe who doesn't know any better, that's what they'll tell you. But if you look at the numbers, since 2005, the number of polar bears has increased from 22,500 to 28,500. And if you go back further than that, it's a lot more significant. Polar bears aren't dying off, and if a population of predators is going to grow, that means it has to have a base population of prey animals upon which to feed. It indicates that there's a healthy ecosystem going on up there, and you know they're not dying off. Over here in the Antarctic, you're looking at penguins. The population of penguins has been increasing since 1990. You can see the graphs there. Their population is increasing. It's just getting more and more. So, you know, supposed global warming isn't having any impact on the wildlife in these areas at all. Yeah, and earlier I forgot to mention hurricanes. People are saying that the number of hurricanes is increasing, and that's indicative of global warming. Well, let's take a look. Here is a graph showing the frequency of cyclones and hurricanes since 1970. That's 50 years. The ones on the bottom are your hurricanes. The ones on the top are your tropical storms. And, you know, they fluctuate up and down. But if you look at 2022 and compare that to 1970, they're really not at all different. And it's the same with tropical storms up there between the two. There really aren't more hurricanes. There really aren't. Also, people are talking about wildfires, you know, being so much more numerous as being indicative of global warming. But once again, there's an article here in the Daily Skeptic which says that there are fewer wildfires today than in the 1930s. And if you look at the chart here, there's 1929, 30, right in there. That's a high water mark, and then down here is 2019. So as you can see, there aren't more wildfires burning anymore. And then down here, I've highlighted Greenpeace, which recently reported Russian government statistics that showed that 9 out of 10 wildfires in the country were caused by humans. That's in Russia. But at any rate, you know, they're really not. They're not becoming more numerous. It may seem that way. You know, you've got that big shebang that was in Hawaii, in Maui, but once again, there's a lot of speculation as to whether or not that might have been deliberately set. People have been murdering each other for land as long as there have been people. But anyway. And, you know, I don't think I need to say anything here. I think this little meme pretty much says it all. So I think it's pretty clear that a lot, if not pretty much almost all these wildfires we're seeing lately have been the result of arson. And, you know, you can get on the net and find a zillion stories about it. I did some screenshots of a few publications. Here's one says that arson was the suspect in fires in Quebec. Yeah, there's another. Well, that was the same one. Okay, Spanish official admits arson the cause of fires. In Greece, it says 160 there. I've heard almost 180. Climate change activists have been arrested for starting fires to promote climate change. There were some in Northern California a year or so ago that did the same thing. Now, let me ask you, if you're going to have, I mean, one or two nutcases, that's one or two nutcases, but if you're going to have damn near 180 people starting fires, that indicates to me that there's a larger organization at play here. Someone from the shadows is orchestrating this. You don't get 170 people all going out at once starting fires, you know, sua sponte. I just don't think that that's going to happen. Okay, so, you know, assuming that global warming is occurring, and I've already stated that I think it may very well be, you know, what's the cause of it? It begs the question, what's the cause of it? Well, everybody's saying, the establishment and all the oligarchs are saying that carbon dioxide is causing it. Well, assuming carbon dioxide is increasing, does it really matter? Okay, in the past, there has been as much as 1,300% more CO2 in the atmosphere than now. And, of course, more CO2 means bigger plants and more oxygen, which made the animals bigger, too. That's why the dinosaurs were so large. Today, I hate to say it, but most people are so damn piss ignorant that they don't know that plants exhale oxygen and breathe in carbon dioxide. And people, or animals, they breathe in the oxygen and breathe out the carbon dioxide. It's a balance, a symbiosis. You know, so what if we've got more carbon dioxide? Does it matter? I just don't see that. And anyway, I've got some videos here some snippets of videos here that are interesting to look at.
The modern warming of Greenland has been going on since 1850. Long before human-generated CO2 was increasing. In general, there's a consistent warming pattern. The best available records of temperature and atmospheric CO2 over the past 650,000 years indicate that the Earth's temperature always rises first, followed by a rise in carbon dioxide.
Published papers clearly shows that it is always the temperature rises first by at least several hundred years to a few thousand years. And then the carbon dioxide curve responds.
Anyway, then he also goes on to talk about how the polar caps are receding on Mars as well. And of course, people can't have anything to do with that. So anyway, here's another.
We've had 6 ice ages in the history of the planet. Every one of these started when we had more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than now. It's clear that if carbon dioxide drives global warming, then we wouldn't have had an ice age. And in fact, the times when the planet had more than 20% carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we had 3 great ice ages. 2 of these 3 had the planet covered in ice. So we have no relationship over time between carbon dioxide and climate.
Anyway, yeah, and that's something that I didn't know until fairly recently, but the 2 of the last 3 ice ages completely covered the whole planet. I mean, the whole thing. And then, of course, we had more CO2 in the atmosphere than now. Then.
The problem is we can't see carbon dioxide. And that makes it possible to make up stories about it that nobody can observe the truth about. And so they're saying that carbon dioxide is causing a climate emergency. And the invisible story that it's doing something bad for the climate is a complete hoax. Nobody has proven that in even the slightest sense. If you look back in time, millions of years, you will see that the Earth's climate was actually much warmer than it is today through most of the history of life. Now, that's just one of the many facts that go against the idea that what we are doing now is causing some kind of catastrophe or...
Yeah, and then he was the one who talked about how there have been 1,300% more, there was 1,300% more CO2 in the atmosphere then than now. And then here's this guy.
The most maddening part of all of that, though, is that these policies, they're not just destroying lives. They're rooted in lies, all of them. Our next guest was once a climate law executive director of the International. Good to see you tonight. Now, you actually say the only way science of climate change. Explain.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people will say, well, you know, Canada, for example, puts out so little greenhouse gas emissions that we shouldn't actually try to reduce it because China is double the United States. Well, the trouble is people argue that, well, yes, but we have to set an example to the world and we have to be good citizens and all that sort of thing. So they're using these arguments quite often that China's double the emissions of the U.S., et cetera. But the real underlying thing is that there is no climate crisis. You know, I was originally an aerospace engineer, and I would give speeches and I wrote articles. I wrote one in the Ottawa Citizen about comparative planetology, how studying the planets helps us understand the Earth better.
And this guy goes on to talk about the planets, too, warming up. So anyway, I mean, there's ample anecdotal evidence to indicate that carbon dioxide doesn't have a damn thing to do with it, and I'm inclined to believe that. I am definitely inclined to believe that. Well, you may be saying, oh, but all them scientists, they just go on and they just say there's so many, and they just saying that climate change is just happening and we're all going to not be safe. Well, let me ask you this. Do you really think it's any harder to buy a scientist than it is to buy a politician? Huh? And, you know, you don't have to buy them all. You just buy off the important ones, the leading members in their community. And then the others will follow suit for peer pressure. And then, of course, you know, if you want to get funding for whatever it is you want to be doing, you're going to have to toe the line. Ultimately, it all comes down to one thing, carbon credits. And let's listen to what this son of a bitch has to say.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on. We're developing
your carbon footprint. What's it going to do is give you so many carbon credits a month or what have you. And, you know, you're going to be able to, and whatever you do is going to cost you some carbon credits. You want to go down to the grocery store, that's carbon credit. You want to drive your car across town, that's some carbon credit. You want to drive to see grandma on Christmas, that's going to be a lot of carbon credits. And if you ever exceed your limit of carbon credits, you'll be penalized. You know, you want to eat a steak? Well, that's some carbon credits. You want to eat some bugs? Well, that won't be quite so many. You know, they're using the ruse of climate change as an excuse to try to set up a one-world government and make you into a techno-serf. With, of course, naturally them at the top, because you know damn well they're not going to pay any attention to carbon credits. They're going to do whatever they damn well wants, just like aristocrats have been doing since the fall of Rome. And it's... Anyway, if you liked the video, you know, like and subscribe. And, oh, heaven help us. Adios.